Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Allie Merkent. I am the Community Partnership and Engagement Lead. We have a great event planned for you guys today to honor National Disability Employment Awareness Month. We would love for this discussion to be as interactive as possible, so please feel free to use your reaction and your emojis. Drop some comments and questions for our panelists in the chat, and we will make sure to answer them before the end of the event. If you would like to ask one of our panelists a question live, please raise your hand and we will call on you. If you can leave yourself on mute for the time being, please do so. And also one more important note, before we get started, we do have closed captions available. To turn closed captions on, go to meeting controls and select more options, then select turn on live captions. I'll now pass it over to Amanda to get us started.
Thank you so much, Allie. And for everyone that's a part of this today, if you don't mind putting yourself on mute while we're going through this, we would greatly appreciate it. Welcome to our first annual NDEAM in Action event. It is the second event in our In Action series, the first being Pride in Action this past June, where we showcased our employer partners and what they're doing within their organizations to support the success of individuals within the LGBTQIA+ community. We have several In Action events scheduled for 2023 for different intersections of identity, and we truly hope that you'll continue to join us. Our next one's going to be in February for Black History Month. I am Amanda Burke, head of Getting Hired. I'm a cisgender woman in her mid-30s. I am biracial with brown curly hair that's currently up today. I have a flower over my right ear, and I have on a black shirt with a gray blazer. I am a proud individual with a disability, having cerebral palsy, specifically spastic hemiplegia, that impacts the entire right side of my body. Getting Hired is a professional engagement platform where individuals looking for employment can find opportunities with companies that are cultivating inclusive and accommodating environments, regardless of how that talent may identify. We truly recognize that a person's identity is multidimensional, so our approach is to acknowledge those identities through different intersections of identity. On our site, we call them communities, if you've been to gettinghired.com. Today, along with my esteemed panel of advocates within our inclusive employer partners, Altice, Prudential, Lincoln Financial Group, and Allegis Global Solutions, all of whom will be introducing themselves very shortly, we are acknowledging, celebrating, and amplifying NDEAM, National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Observed each October, NDEAM celebrates the contributions of workers with disabilities and educates the value of a workforce inclusive of their varied and diverse skills and talents. NDEAM's origins date back to 1945, when Congress enacted a law declaring the first week of October to be a national focus on employing individuals with physical disabilities. 20 years later, it expanded to be observed to a month. But since 1945, NDEAM, along with disability civil rights, have continued to evolve and expand. A few important moments that I think could add some context to why we celebrate NDEAM are the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504, the first federal civil rights protection for people with disabilities, that they cannot be excluded from the participation, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Think of hospitals, schools, welfare, and government offices. This also extended to additional sections, such as Section 501, hiring by the government, subcontractors of the government, 503, and transportation and building accessibility, which is 502. Then we have the 504 sit-in. That was in 1977, where people with disabilities occupied federal buildings in the US to push the issuance of long delayed regulation regarding Section 504 of the Rehab Act that I just mentioned. Not sure if you've checked out Crip Camp on Netflix, but I definitely want to shout that out because it does give such a great insight to that entire experience for the individuals who pushed that along. And honestly, for those of us like myself who have a disability, gave us the ADA and the chance to live the life that we have now, though we have so much further to go. We also have in 1990, the American with Disabilities Act I just mentioned. This was a landmark legislation that prohibits the discrimination of people with disabilities in all areas of public life, including jobs, schools, transportation, public and private places that are all open to the general public. The ADA gives civil right protections to individuals with disabilities similar to those provided on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, age, and religion. Every year, NDEAM has a theme given by ODEP, the Office of Disability Employment Policy, and this year's theme is Disability, Part of the Equity Equation. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be learning more about how our employers are supporting their employees with disabilities as well as their talent pipelines and ensuring that disability is truly a part of their equity equation. Let's get started with the introductions from our panelists. Brad, can you kick us off? And once you do, if you would also share why NDEAM is personally or individually important and impactful for you. We're going to be asking more about why it's important to your employers in a future question.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Brad Caprari. I'm a Vice President of Corporate Accounting Policy and Prudential. And in my other job, I am the National Executive Director of our Disabilities Business Resource Group, acronym ADAPT. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a 40-something white male. I'm wearing a blue sport coat today with a white button down that has a blue and purple check pattern on it. And I have very, very short hair, which may be known as a crew cut, a buzz cut, or for certain swaths of East New England, it's called a wiffle. I'm in my office today, so you're seeing, a blank whiteboard behind me and white walls, the standard corporate fare. And the reason that NDEAM is important to me is I'm a caregiver. Both of my children have disabilities. I have a son with autism, and I have my youngest has ADD and anxiety disorder. So that's my personal connection.
Thank you so much for sharing, Brad. Amanda?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amanda Welch. I am a recruiting consultant from Lincoln Financial Group. I am a 40-something female, cisgender female. Little bit about me. I'm wearing purple today, a turtleneck sweater. In terms of some descriptors of me, dark hair, almost black, not quite dark brown. Have to look real close for that. Dark eyes. I wear glasses, black rims. If I were standing, I stand about 5'4". I am not. I am sitting today, and I do have a kind of virtual background, as my office also serves as where my treadmill is. So I'm trying to not share that necessarily with everyone. Been with Lincoln now for a little over 7 years. Very involved and have been involved with getting hires. So it's a great organization to be a part of. In what NDEAM means to me, I am one that has a disability that is not seen. So I have, unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, it makes me who I am, I guess. I have depression and anxiety disorder. It is something I've been able to manage for many, many years. But because of that, I've always been able to advocate for myself, and I've always had those resources and tools, but that is not the case for everyone. So that is what NDEAM means to me. I also like to be an ally for the larger disability community because no two are exactly the same, no matter if they are the same. So something that I enjoy giving back to regularly. So that's a little bit about me. I'll pass that to Marcus.
Thank you, Amanda. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Marcus Johnson. I am a newly promoted program executive at Allegis Global Solutions. I am a cisgender male. I am currently wearing a pink golf polo, and I have a cleanly shaven head, very shiny and bald if it were sunny over here in Michigan. But on the flip side, I do have a full beard that stretches down my neck. What NDEAM means to me is a lot. I grew up as an ally to the disability community. My parents managed group homes when I was younger, and it gave me a lot of visibility into what the disability community looked like and what they had to deal with on the outside, from an outside perspective. I also have family members who identify as having a disability, and It may not be necessarily diagnosed on my end, but definitely have some mental health things that I'm working through currently. So happy to be here. And over to you, Clint.
How is everybody? Welcome. My name is Clinton Brown. My close buddies know me as Clinton Brown III or CB3, so you can call me CB3. I am a cisgendered male from Long Island, New York, a finance professional in the telecom industry. I'm wearing a white button down. I'm sitting in a black chair with a beige wall behind me in my office with the door closed nice and tight. And I'm looking forward to this session. I have a disability. I'm a little person. I've been in the corporate finance world for close to 18 years now. And I love doing these panels. I run Altice Access's disability employment group called Team Access. We really help the company just with advice, pave the way for employees and customers with disability to provide them the best experience that they can have.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your intros. And it looks like we all have a deep connection in some form or fashion. Just to share a few stats with everyone that's watching, 26% of the US population has a disability. And not all people, like myself, or even you heard today, say that they have a proud disability, right? That is one of the reasons why we have less than a 5% self-ID rate from an employment perspective, though we have 26% of the US population, or 61 million people who have a disability. As Amanda mentioned as well, 70% of disabilities are non-apparent. 80% are acquired over the course of your life versus 20%, like myself, with being congenital. And then 1 out of 5 employees are caregivers. So very grateful, Brad, for you sharing your perspective as well. Like many individuals, either individual people or employers, we're all in different areas when it comes to our diversity journey. Now you start thinking about disability and inclusion in that journey. It seems like Prudential has a little bit of a pulse on their finger when it comes to disability inclusion, having your BRG in place for over a decade. Brad, can you tell us a little bit more about Prudential's BRG for individuals with disabilities?
Sure. It actually began in 1990 as an affinity group specifically for deaf and hard of hearing peoples. And it progressed in 2002 to include all disabilities and is more akin to what we have today. So we're looking at a good 20 years. And as far as the progression goes, it really comes down to a lot of it has to do with care and feeding of the BRGs from leadership and from the internal leadership. So just because you're 20 years old doesn't mean you're much further along than a 2 or 3-year-old BRG. It really it takes a lot of work and a lot of strategic initiative to continue to advance the BRG.
100%. Wow. I don't even think you shared with us whenever we were talking that it's 20 years that you've had the organization. I thought it was just 10. So that's just phenomenal. And to hear that it started off with the deaf community and then it was able to evolve from there, that to me sounds like it was very holistic, right? And meeting the needs of the individuals who voiced or shared their opinions with the type of support that they were looking for. Very, very cool to hear about how you guys have been able to evolve. Amanda, can you give us a little bit of a history of the business resource group that Lincoln Financial Group has in place?
Absolutely. So we have the People with Disabilities, BRG, or Business Resource Group. We are one of 7 BRGs and a MAC, so a Multicultural Awareness Committee. So there are 8 of us total, people with disabilities being one of them, established in 2013. So nearly that 10-year mark, not quite there. And we do have over 100 members where we're really focused with all of our BRGs, but particularly those with people with disabilities, on making sure that we can make an impact in 3 major kind of pillars, for lack of a better term. So in the workplace, so where we work, what we do as an organization, and focusing on one of our most important customers, our employees, how we work in the marketplace and how we're attracting customers and what we do and how we're working on those different sectors, right? To be more inclusive of all people in the world and not just people who are like us individually, right? So, and then that also feeds into the community. How do we support our communities? And doing so again with those with disabilities. We have an annual signature event. Again, we'll probably talk about that at some point, and a lot of different things that we do. But again, we have over 100 members that help us do that.
It's amazing to hear all the engagement that you have. 100 members, a part of your team. That's phenomenal. And I love how you broke out the pillars to really get intentional on how these different business resource groups can be impacting the business. I know, and I'm sure it may come up in conversation, or someone might ask, there are affinity groups, there's employee resource groups, there's business resource groups. You mentioned MAC, multicultural awareness committees. I've now heard of EBRGs, where they're saying employee business resource groups, to be able to kind of merge those two together to realize the employee will always be the first and most important thing in this scenario, but business is still on the table and has to be a topic of conversation to make sure that we're successful for all parties involved. So thank you so much for giving us that insight. Marcus, I think you mentioned that you're a founding member of the Allegis Global Solutions Individual with Disabilities, ERG, as you guys call it. Can you tell us a little bit more about your group there?
Yeah, so our ERG employee resource group is named Enable. Our mission and goal is to champion and provide an inclusive environment for those with a disability within AGS, regardless of global region. We do have Enable enacted across all of our regions, so North America, Europe, as well as APAC, which is an awesome achievement. In North America, though, like you said, we are rather new. We have been active now for just over 3 years, and we are getting to a place where we're picking up steam. So what started off is very much an ERG that is meant for kind of educational purposes and awareness, to now more functional and practical purposes, impacting our company at a scale of altering policy or bringing certain ideas and needs to light that weren't there previously. Some of those things that we're most proud of over the last year is for those that are aware of Disability In and the Disability Equality Index or Equity Index. We were able to incentivize EGS to partake in that, and we just got our results back on those to give us more of a strategic land, kind of lay of the land of what we need to do. So very proud of what our ERG is doing, and looking forward to what is to come.
I love what you shared there. Everybody is in a different stage from an employer perspective on getting an ERG specifically for individuals with disabilities. I think 3 years is a phenomenal time. When you look at the individuals or the employer partners that we have, 100% of our employer partners are committed to disability inclusion. And yet we're probably at about 80% of them having a set up ERG for individuals with disabilities. And I believe that those numbers are probably offset comparatively to the larger amount if you took that away from just being, associated with getting hired. So grateful and so glad that you were able to get this started, and how impressive that you also are global and able to impact all of your employees across the globe. CB3, you said I could call you that.
I love it. I love it.
I know you. I think you know what I'm going to ask you.
I think we're best friends.
We're besties already. Will you be besties? Let's do it. Tell us more about Altice's ERG. You mentioned before, with all this energy, you love doing these panels, so we know that you're the pro here. Tell us what's going on over at Altice and supporting individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, so it's interesting because my career journey started with a company called Cablevision, and we were bought out by Altice 6 years ago. So in the previous group with Cablevision, we're talking the mid 2000s, and ERGs, BRGs were just starting to kind of gain steam, but there was no focus on that. When I needed to get something done in the company, I had to make sure that I made friends with the right people in HR, in facilities, you name it. and get a stool, a special chair, and I had to rely on my charisma to really get things done. But that was only for myself. But what about the people who don't necessarily have that big voice or that push the door in kind of mentality? This is where affinity groups and ERGs and whatnot really become effective in the workplace, to really help pave the way for individuals, for all of us. And so 4 years ago, when our CEO announced I want to start a D&I program, well, I made sure that I made my way right down to the theater, and I shook his hand right after that meeting, and I said, Mr. Goey, my name is Clinton Brown III. I'd like to lead an affinity group for people with disabilities. And you know what? I got an email 20 minutes later from his assistant setting up a call, and 2 weeks later, I was the affinity group leader for Team Access at Altice USA. So I was really excited, really inspired by the fact that that was able to happen, that I was able to have that connection. And since then, that was 4 years ago, I've been leading the group. We have 8 affinity groups within the company. We have anywhere between 5 and 8 committee leaders that basically are my cabinet during the year. And that I change that out every year. I try to change about 70% of that committee leadership group out every year to get new blood and to keep people in focus. And I move up members. So we have about 125 members. We meet with our committee leaders every month, and then we meet with all of the members 6 times a year. So we do realize that it's a volunteer basis, right? My day job is revenue planning. My night job is leading Altice Access, and I don't want to lean on my volunteers too much to where that they feel overwhelmed. I think one of the main things that I've learned in the last 4 years is let's take inches, let's take small wins and add them up to victories. And we are not going to be able to create a utopia for people with disabilities in one day at Altice. But what we can do is we can identify really important priorities and go tackle them. And I can't do everything. I have to use my committee leadership. And I think that idea, it took me a little while to embrace, but it's helped me. And it really, for me also, it gives me great satisfaction knowing that one day when I leave Altice, I'll leave it better. And the next CB3 that comes in to the company hopefully has more tools than they would have if we didn't have this group going.
And Clinton, you shared a lot of amazing things there. First off, I hear you. Sometimes I think I'm Superwoman, so to hear that you're Superman, Man of Steel, and can do it all by yourself in the moment, and then realizing that you can't, that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. But to be able to see that the evolution that your team has grown to and how you have these meetings and so many people that are a part of the groups, it's amazing to see. I do have a secondary question for you guys for the ERGs. Do you guys have any criteria to be a part of it? Are you guys allowing allies into the group? Do you guys define disability? Anybody interested in talking more about that for their organization?
Yeah, I can chime in at least for Enable, since we just kind of went through all this. We do not have any qualifications to join our ERG. You can identify as having a disability. You can be an ally to the disability community. We find equal importance in both ends. The vast majority of our ERG at the current moment do identify as allies, but we have a very high suspicion that it's more so a matter of comfort in disclosing, if they do actually land within the disability community themselves. And we're starting to see people find that comfort. So that's been a wonderful thing to kind of behold from a leadership end. And getting that kind of exposure to our executives to show them that this is important to us as employees has been monumental.
That's amazing to hear. Anybody else?
I can second that. At Prudential, our ADAPT BRG is almost at 1,000 people. The senior leadership within the company is extremely active within the BRGs as well, which kind of gives us a platform And yes, we have, bring in both peoples with disabilities, caregivers of peoples with disabilities, and ardent allies. And back when, because I've had different roles within ADAPT, I haven't always been a leader. We have a max of 4 years because we do have access to the ELT. So it is, a fairly prized role. But back when I was in recruiting, my one big recruiting point was, this is the one BRG that almost everybody at some point in their life will be a part of. Whether you come by your disability, whether you're born with it, congenital, whether you have a short-term accident, and I'm stumbling over my words and I apologize. I'll just close it out with, or, straight old age, we're all going to be a part of this group. We're all going to need accommodations. And, we're all very intersectional people, but this is the one group that nearly all humans will be a part of at some point.
You're so spot on, Brad, and that definitely resonated with me. We are sitting, as Amanda mentioned, but if I'm standing, I'm almost 6'1", and my dad's 6'5". And you say old. I don't consider myself old in mid-30s. It's subjective. But I already have back issues and back pains and things that I know are going to continue to progress, and I know that's going to impact my overall quality of life. So you're spot on. This is definitely a group that could be anyone could go in or out of at any moment. Open the floor, Clinton or Amanda. Did you want to add anything there?
I would definitely say our groups need, yes, no requirement, right? Being willing and wanting. Wanting, whether it's how much you want to get involved or you want to learn. I think that's something that I've loved about being part of our BRGs as a whole. And again, I'm in more than one. It's that learning opportunity. There's so much I have been able to learn that I didn't know. And again, even in the disability space, right? Because we see the ones you can see, the ones you can't see, people that go in and out of that space regularly. And again, the challenges that can come in any of those different phases, right? So anybody that again is an ally or they themselves have experienced or are currently, in a state of disability, we absolutely want you to be part of part of that organization as we educate and we get involved, again, whether it be across the organization or out in our communities.
Love that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, we encourage everyone to join Team Access. Some of my more effective committee leaders are individuals who are in other BRGs, and they bring to our table what they have learned and what has worked in their group. And so I just find that when I have those folks join, I know I'm going to get a lot of really positiveness into the room because they've led before. They're coming in as a leader, and I need that because nobody wants to hear the one person continuing to sort of stand on the watchtower and proclaim what we need to do. You need to have other people cycle in as leaders, and I'm learning. I learn a lot because I'm in the disability world, but I also need and want to understand our other affinity groups and what they stand for and what they're trying to accomplish and how they do things. So that's really where I see the most effectiveness is when you have really intersectionality come together. And I encourage members on Team Access to go join other affinity groups as well.
I think that's awesome. And it really ties into some of those things I mentioned before, right? We all have a multidimensional identity, and it would be silly to believe that we only bring one of those to work every day. So to be able to have the opportunity to put your thumbprint on or be a part of the voice for all the ways that you identify is a very unique and awesome opportunity.
I will make it a point that I've been noticing, and I don't know if it has anything to do with emotional connection to disability and being able to not get something done. But when somebody comes into our group that doesn't have a disability, but has a real fiery attitude about creating progress, I noticed that they're able to sort of cut through some of the BS when it comes to like getting, having a wall put in front of them to get something done, maybe at a retail store or whatnot. They tend to not be able to be discouraged as much. And so I always encourage my members with disabilities, don't be discouraged. Don't be, don't let this stop you. Like, because I have other people who are just running through a wall, and they tend to be the ones who aren't disabled in my group. And I'm noticing that. So I don't know if anybody else notices that in their group. And I don't know, I don't want to derail it, but if that would be an interesting point. But I mean, it's something I've noticed.
Oh, spot on. It sounds like it might be parallel to Marcus when he was talking about a lot of the individuals that are a part of their group being more caretakers or allies instead of individually identifying. But then there's a part of me, that believes, are they a part of the community? But to your point, there's so much shame that's tied to the word disability and the being someone who has that identity. Is it your way to be able to get close enough to it without having to face it?
Correct.
No, love this. It's great conversation, guys. Thank you. So within the intros that you guys did, we talked a little bit about why NDEAM is important to you individually so that we could learn more before we got started. Now let's talk about why National Disability Employment Awareness Month is important for your company to acknowledge. Not only that, what did you do this month to celebrate and amplify? And what have you done maybe in previous years as well that you might be proud of? Brad, it sounds like Prudential did quite a few things when we were preparing for this. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, within ADAPT, we sponsored 5 different events for NDEAM. Our goal, we have multiple goals within the BRG, and Amanda said it more eloquently than I can. But we're here to support and advocate the employee, as well as to educate and to help the business. And a lot of that kind of intersects. One of my big goals, since I became leader, was to reduce the stigma around disability, as well as something we just spoke about. We've got very quiet members, and we need to find a way to give them voices. Real quick, let's just run through. We had a recruiting event at the very beginning of the month around it was an autism hiring summit, one of our many recruiting in the disability space projects that we have. We had an ADHD education event, which was meant again to destigmatize and also give some voice to our membership. We had a mental health storyteller event where we had some very brave folks share their mental health story. That was totally open to everyone. And we had others just chime in throughout and start telling their stories. It's one of those interactive kind of, I guess you could call it peer circle that becomes very cathartic very quickly. Internally, to support our membership, we had an internal training for ADAPT membership. There's a few internal training programs in Prudential, one of them called Talent Marketplace. And we find that those who are more active in their BRGs don't always have the time to dedicate to some of those other ancillary things within the company. So we want to make sure all of our memberships are fully versed in Talent Marketplace. And actually right now, and I'm going to be popping over to that as soon as we're done, we have a business partnership event with both our global technology on their ongoing ADA projects, as well as we're trying to work with group insurance on some of the verbiage around their letters out to policyholders. So we're trying to hit all of those pillars, internal, external, you name it. We typically do our big event in October, but we've had so much that we've shifted that, and our showcase event is going to be closer to International Disability Awareness Day on December 3rd, which is a Saturday. So I think we're doing December 1st.
Love that you plugged that as well. Fantastic. Disability happens all year round, not just in the month of October. But man, you just shared a ton of stuff. Love hearing how you touched on autism with that recruiting event, the ADHD education event. I know that, from the Getting Hired employer partners, for the individuals who do have ERGs, they are now thinking about splitting off into a neurodiversity ERG as well to try to get individuals to want to be a part of that from a different perspective. So it's really cool to hear how you guys are educating individuals around the ADHD. And then I loved how you're partnering and what you're doing next with inclusive language. That's a huge piece of I believe, disability inclusion, but in all honesty, and equity in general. So sounds amazing that what the things you're doing over there. Amanda, I know when we spoke, Lincoln Financial Group also had a really, really cool, exciting event that we were all asking questions about. Tell us more about that as well as the tie-in to NDEAM.
Absolutely. So early October, so timing couldn't have been more impeccable to align with NDEAM and things of that nature. But we hosted our first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Conference. It was a 3-day conference that was cycled across all employees. All employees. Now, that wasn't just a focus, though, on disabilities, but again, definitely included. And there was so much because it did highlight all of our BRGs, a lot of those different perspectives were really, you can learn a lot from one and the other. So a lot of, interconnectivity and intersection between, those two. A few of the pieces that really stuck out very specifically when working with our people with disabilities, BRG, and kind of that perspective, we had actually one of the very first, so the first day, one of the very first presentations that came through was really around achieving diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. And we had the pleasure of having a great conversation with Marlee Matlin, who, of course, actress, author, and advocate. So it was just really, really amazing opportunity to understand some of the things that she has done, some of that perspective she has as being part of right, the disability community, how we can advocate, how we can be allies, and what that has looked like to have access, right? So access was part of that. We also had several breakout sessions, again, and this is all encompassing over several days, but anything from, how we work with suppliers and making sure we have equity in our suppliers as well, what we're doing in some of our different work for, what some of our different areas, what we're doing in terms of talent and the HR diversity action, team, and some of those perspectives, talking about things like allyship as a whole, right? How do we become, how are we, and how can we be allies to those in the business? We had one that really spoke to very specifically, how do we prepare those with disabilities for the workforce, and how do we prepare our workforce for those with disabilities? So, right, being able to bring in those partners to talk about, some of those things that we need to think about, that it's not, we just want to target, but also how do we do it the right way? How do we make sure that they have the right experience? Because that's just as important as it is for, for everyone, right? It's how we identify and be our authentic selves at work. So some of those components are huge. And again, just tremendous amount of information that was able to be shared. As not everyone, right? Because business still has to be done. As everyone wasn't maybe able to attend every single piece every single day. And again, with breakout sessions, I couldn't attend everything. The beauty was that we also recorded all of it. So we can start to obtain some of those pieces and see what we missed and be able to continue to, think about, be educated, be made aware, why is this important? And why is it important not only to us as employees, but from the top too? Why is it important to our leadership? And we definitely have a huge amount of commitment to DE&I as a whole in our organization. In terms of our BRG, so again, our BRG was part of that, among with, like I said, our 7 other organizations that we partner with, and just again, huge amount of support that we get across the organization. Very specifically for our BRG, I know that we've been doing an article series, on people with disabilities, right? So what that has looked like, being able to talk about famous people that we don't realize maybe that had disabilities, and how, again, many of the times they are very much like us. Partnerships, of course, continuously with Disability In, getting hired. We have a great podcast and webinar series through Lincoln's absence advisor portal, so a lot of opportunities there. The list can go on and on. So those are just a few things. I would say a great thing I'm super excited about, which is tomorrow. So again, timing wise, we actually get to have our signature event. So our signature event every year is called You Are Not Alone. And every year we target a different group within the disabilities community. So last year we were able to focus on the stigma of mental health and the culture of the Black community, how that's very, very stigmatized. But as someone who is not part of directly the Black community, but again, an ally, so much of that played into why it took me forever to get the support that I needed for mine, again, as a disability that you can't see. So again, part of that just so much resonated. But then tomorrow's event is focused on those caregivers and the challenges that they can have caregiving for someone with disabilities, and how they have to be able to advocate and in many cases be that person for them, right? And what that might look like. So very, very exciting things among other things that we do. Again, a lot of this was just truly encompassed within the month of October, but many things that we do year round. Of course, we also get the pleasure of having our name on a stadium, Lincoln Financial Field, and every year we do get involved with the Eagles Autism Challenge. So we were the founding sponsor, and this is our 5th year, or at least 2022 was our 5th year. And in those 5 years, we've been able to raise $16 million for the autism community. In those 5 years. So again, just a lot of impact that we are doing in our community, again, with our employees through our DE&I conferences, and again, working, across the business as well. So I could talk all day. I am not going to do that too much. I'm going to swing this over to Marcus or back to Amanda.
I'll take it just for a second because you just shared a lot of really great stuff. I love the podcast, the articles, the living in the life of, have people tell their stories. Love that your focus tomorrow is about the caregiver. How often are caregivers kind of overlooked because they're not necessarily a part of the community, and the power of being seen. I can't wait to hear more about that. And then you talked about just transparency and the two-way street from the 3-day event that you had. Hey, not only is it about hiring individuals with disabilities, but once we've hired them, how do we serve them? I am a big proponent that we are now moving beyond this idea of underrepresented. I feel like we're seeing more representation as a whole in the DE&I-A space or DE&I-B, depending on how you look at it. I think it's truly about serving. These communities and groups are underserved, not underrepresented. So I love that has been a focus for you guys as well. Yes, Marcus, what's going on this month with Allegiance Group Solutions? How you guys making disability a part of the equity equation over there?
Yeah, so it's gonna say first off, Amanda, that's so awesome what you guys are doing. I was gonna say it's hard to even come off the heels of that, but we're proud of what we're doing right now. We have a lot of more communication going on than anything throughout the month. We have a Yammer campaign where we're highlighting those with that identify as having a disability. It's a three post spotlight just to provide awareness not only at just the employee level but into executive leadership as well. To kick off the month, our program manager for North America released an article on LinkedIn discussing the importance of neurodiversity within the workplace, and just how having that type of inclusive environment allows for multiple benefits across the board, from just internal workforce morale to also potential business impacts downstream. And then enable, leading into the month, we kicked off a little early in the last week of September and had an event to discuss not only just the mental health disability spectrum, but also to have an intersectional event with our ERG Embrace, which is dedicated to bringing awareness and inclusive habits to those that are people of color or in minority groups. We had a panel of internal employees that ranged from various ethnic backgrounds and age demographics, and discussed what mental health meant to them, how they're able to bring their best selves to work each and every day, and the importance of that to them in a long-standing career path. And that kind of feeds into just the overarching theme with AGS's approach to NDEAM, is to continue to bolster that inclusive environment, because like I said, it not only provides the employee to bring their best self to work, but there's plenty of information out there that advocates and corresponds to having an inclusive environment internally, results in higher performance for a business and company, whether it be financial or just wins overall. So that's a lot of what we're going here. I know for sake of time, likewise, I'm going to keep it to a minimum, but I'll end off here with just the intersectionality and the importance of that for us over the course of our year. Um, like was stated at the beginning, disability is something that the majority of us are going to end up falling into that category just over time and over the course of what happens in life. But it also just the importance of highlighting how it affects different demographics and different social groups differently, from the LGBTQ plus community to our veterans and our caregivers. It hits everybody, and that's probably one of the biggest things that I've always been dedicated to advocating for within the Enable group, is just how widespread the disability community is, because that is one of the most important features, I think, for this community and all.
Could not agree with you more there, Marcus. I think there's a way to make much more impacts when you have allies that are not necessarily the way that you identify, and to be able to bring some of those groups together, it just creates a window of opportunity that can go anywhere. So love that is a focus for AGS. So Clinton, I know as your partner with Getting Hired, we got a unique opportunity to partner with you on an internal call this week. Shout out to Brittany Knowles for representing Getting Hired on the call, and Lucas Solomon. So I got a little sneak peek to this answer, but can you share to the audience why NDEAM is important and some of the things you've done this month to support and amplify the workforce and talent pipelines that are a part of the disability community?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, NDEAM, it's important because it's a time for us to remind ourselves as a company why we're doing it, what we're doing it, and who we're doing it for. That to me it serves as a reminder. Now we got to continue to do the work. We got to continue to bring in people with disabilities in for interviews, and we got to be able to simply match up skills with job requirements and bring the people who are right for the job in, and do whatever we can to not make an accommodation feel like somebody, like we're giving out, like we're doing it special for them. Like, like we need to lead as a company first with that. What can I do for you so that you can be the best employee for us? Boom. That's what we're going to do, and that's how we're going to come at that. We've been doing a lot. We've had a trivia kind of event for our members just to keep it light and fun. And it was basically 50 questions, multiple choice. Everybody come in, all sorts of affinity groups were in. It got a little competitive, and half of the questions were disability history related. So we have fun scouring the internet and going on, IMDb and whatnot, getting really funny questions. And every multiple choice had a funny, like one of them was funny. Like we know that that's not the answer. So, and then the other half of the questions were just random pop culture, music, whatever, to keep everybody just kind of, lighthearted. We had a great time. It was really fun. We gave out gift cards, and it was really just a good time for us to get together. People learned a lot who were disabled and non-disabled about disability culture. It was really cool. The other thing we did was we had a really great panel discussion this week in which Getting Hired was featured on, and Brittany and Lucas did an awesome job, and I had some other folks in the disability sort of industry, as I call it, around the country. People with disabilities, people without disabilities, and they were able to provide their expert veteran analysis of what a company needs to do, the mindset that they need to have to be authentic and not just celebrate, but actually make a difference. And that's kind of like my big, overarching theme this month is, we could celebrate, but let's not start lighting the candles on the cake until we actually start to see data and we actually start to make a real impact. And I'm going to continue to kind of beat that drum.
Great drum to be banging, I tell you. I completely agree with you. It's nice to be able to say that you're doing things, but data traditionally doesn't lie. And so it's awesome that that continues to be the forefront of the way that you guys are approaching it. We have about 10 minutes left here, and I do have a couple more questions, but I do want to make sure that our audience members also have an opportunity to ask questions. So if there's anybody who's brave and would like to come off of mute or raise their hand, we would love to have you ask a question to any of these amazing advocates and panel members. All right, we've got one from Carla Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Carla Johnson. And I apologize if this has already been framed, but how can I, a non-disabled person, be a better ally to this community?
Phenomenal question, Carla. One I'm sure we get to hear often. Anybody feel like they want to take this on?
I can provide a little bit, just as the Enable ERG is predominantly ally based. I think it comes from, the biggest thing is just promoting the inclusive habits and language within within your responsibilities and within your scope, and even within leadership. A big thing that we've been discussing this year is language, and how accessible language is very, it's surprisingly vast, if once you start dipping into it. Just some of the things that are said on a day-to-day basis, you must be crazy, or I'm just the small things like that that can be taken in the wrong light in in any circumstance. For instance, one that came to me is, I completely had a snafu in reading during a presentation, and I made a remark. I'm an idiot. I can't read, and I quickly got a response from a partner, who was kind enough, and I had a relationship, to state how they have dyslexia, but that does not qualify them as being an idiot. Very quick lesson, and one that I have, taken in stride and want to continue pushing for. So just having that visibility and awareness on a day-to-day basis as an ally. You never know who you're going to interact with that may have a disability. So having that inclusive mindset when speaking, when acting, when leading, is a big first step.
Very, very valid points there, Marcus. That was phenomenal. Clinton, do you want to add?
Yeah, I would say a great piece of advice would just be to listen and default to the person who has the disability experience, and not try to act like that experience. Don't try to pretend that just because at one point maybe one of your parents was in a wheelchair, you understand the disability experience. There also, for you to understand that there are two very, very separate experiences between the caregiver and the person with the disability, and both of those personalities are going to be in this room, which is an interesting dynamic. I once had an executive basically say, "Oh yeah, my 80-year-old dad was he was in a wheelchair, so I know what you need," and I was like, "You don't." But right, so those are the things that, as an example, probably not to do, right? We've seen it all. We've heard it all. So listen, go in with an open heart and be fearless.
Love that, Clinton. Love that perspective. Brad, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I was gonna just recommend instead of being a bystander, be an upstander. Speak out and advocate for. Ableism is very prevalent, and to Marcus's point, microaggressions are all over the place. And wherever you can be that person to combat that ableism and combat those microaggressions, be strong enough to stand up and say, hey, you really shouldn't say that. Thank you, Marcus, for everything you said as well.
Absolutely. I think valid points being made there, and just personal experience to call out where I think something was done right. I know I shared before that I have cerebral palsy and it's spastic hemiplegia. Don't know if you guys heard in the news about Lizzo's song where she utilized the word spaz. Spaz is directly from the term spastic. And once she got called out on that, she instantly changed the word. She said, hey, I didn't realize that, I didn't know, right? Maybe she didn't have an Amanda Burke in her life to be able to tell her, like, nah, that's not the right direction, right? But she instantly made a change. And so it's really cool to be able to see in those moments with those celebrities. I mean, I know you talked about, connecting celebrities for people from an identity perspective. You don't have to know everything, right? But to be as inclusive as possible with your language and actions is the most important thing. And then one little bit of information that I think is really awesome is we often talk about having not necessarily allies, but like a mentor, right? As a non-disabled individual, find yourself a disabled mentor, right? As a woman, I get told all the time to go find a male partner or a male. I've been telling my male partners to go find a female mentor. I strongly recommend that if you're non-disabled, have some conversations, or if you do know somebody, get very curious and compassionate and see if they will help you better understand how to be more inclusive with your language and actions. All right, guys, we have 2 minutes left now. So I truly, truly appreciate everything that we talked about on this panel. What a great conversation full of nuggets of knowledge that we're going to be able to take with us for future NDEAMs, as well as just moving forward in our day-to-day lives. Remember, we are all on our own personal journeys when it comes to where we are with disability inclusion. We would love for you to learn more about National Disability Employment Awareness Month through our NDEAM toolkit. You can utilize the code here on the screen, or you can go to our website, www.gettinghired.com. There's a lot of really great information in there, an accommodations playbook, understanding the job seekers experience that has a disability, as well as a lot of blogs and information. So we would love for you to check that out. And then also, if you are talent looking for your next inclusive employer, let it be Altice, AGS, Prudential, or Lincoln Financial Group, come find their jobs on our site. Come take a look at it and see what they're doing. And if you're an employer looking on how you can be more inclusive and get involved with more different aspects of identity, come join us as well as one of our members. I want to leave everybody with one of my favorite mother of disability, Miss Judith Heumanns quotes. In 2022, I think that this is very relevant. I even made mention to it. Too many times diversity is only focused on race and it's focused on gender. And a quote that Judy has is, "It is no longer acceptable not to have a woman at the table. It is no longer acceptable to not have people of color at the table, but no one thinks to see if the table is accessible." It is all about access and accessibility and how we can continue to make that easier for everyone. Thank you again for sharing this hour with us. We're so grateful for you. Cannot wait till our next one. We'll see you next year, you guys.